Oh, Psychopaths. Oh my god, I mentioned this when we found out the full name of Kamui. When we found out his name was Kirito Kamui, I remember I stated in my review, I should not be remembering SAO. I'm an SAO fan, but I should not be remembering SAO when I am watching Psychopaths. And guess what they decided to do to me? Game started. I'm like, oh, what the what? What? Oh my god, really? Really? It's so ironic. It's ironic that it's Kirito Kamui that says game started. What the fuck? Okay. Let's just put that down. I didn't see that. I didn't see that entire dialogue. I didn't see that writing. I just didn't see that. I did not see that dialogue. I want to erase that from my brain. Okay. Moving past whatever I was just talking about, let's talk about this episode. Once again, another brutal episode of Psychopaths. After the events of the last episode, with Oyanagi just getting fucking brutally murdered, everybody, like innocent civilians getting brutally murdered, wide out in the open, the events of this episode, of course, takes place right after that, and we get to see the repercussions of that. I mean, Mika in this episode actually is in the bathroom vomiting, and I'm like, I mean, seriously, okay? I'll get into Mika in just a moment. I actually want to talk about the events of this episode. The ending conclusion, right there, once again, it points us to that Togane is somewhat evil. It definitely points us towards that, because as I said a couple episodes back with my Fury and Chibit's Furies about the hologram that's most likely on Togane, that might be Kogami. It could possibly be Kogami underneath the hologram of Togane, and that is why he's acting all suspicious, why you see him merge in the opening song and stuff like that. But with this ending conclusion, it's very, very strange how there's a bunch of pictures, circles, and just, it looks like Togane is very obsessed with Akane, and I'm like, whoa. So yeah, that overall, that ending, I'm like, oh shit. So yeah, he's definitely probably evil now. One thing I want to talk about is, once again, the opening song is glitchier. I've been saying this every episode review, but it's getting glitchier and glitchier by the episode. I am not joking. This week's episode of Psychopaths, you can't even make out the freaking face of Togane anymore. You can't even make it out. You can't even make Kogami's face out. And the entire scene where you see Akane's head going like this back and forth, it's starting to look really bad. So clearly the opening is changing by the episode, and I wonder exactly what is going to happen when the entire opening song becomes just so fucking glitchy. It might turn into something else. Maybe the opening song could be like a hologram. Maybe it's like a reference towards, maybe the Togane Kogami Fury. Maybe the opening song is actually just a hologram. The hologram is going to break down, and then we're going to see a new opening song that might reveal all the events that's probably going on in this season. But right now, I just wanted to point out, if anyone did not notice, the opening song once again changed a little bit in this episode. So moving past the point of the opening song, I want to talk about a couple things that happened. The main point of this episode is Kamui trolling the inspectors and the enforcers, and the entire police force. Kamui is trolling. And he's a master troll in this episode. Like, he trolled him last week by making an inspector kill another inspector. Well, this week, he decides to make a game and have all these robots that were introduced in this episode that are being made to actually be attached to a part of a game, like a freaking, just a handheld game, and you see these different random people all across, Japan playing this game, and they're activating different robots, and they're actually controlling them, and the targets they see in this game is actually real-life people, and I'm like, oh, shit. Like, I mean, you have these, like, innocent civilians, like, oh, I got it, I'm not letting you escape, acting like a normal gamer would, but they're actually killing people. Right there, I was like, oh, crap. So, like, the overall trolling with Kamui actually attaching the game to the robots is absolutely unreal. The reason why, once again, this shows another flaw in Cibiel's system. It completely shows another flaw. For instance, you have it to where people, innocent civilians for instance, these kids, these random people that are playing games, are actually murdering people without knowing it. and they're not being able to raise their psychopath level. So clearly in this entire event, it shows another flaw with Sibyl's system, because people can kill people without being detected, and without even technically knowing it. So once again, Sibyl's system proves to have another security flaw. I just want to point that out if you didn't understand the overall concept and meaning. Like, the main concept of this episode is to show that Sibyl's system had, once again, another flaw. Now, the one thing I will say is, this episode, once again, made me hate Mika a whole lot more. Let's just be real here. A bunch of us pretty much have to agree. She is a very unlikable character. There are some of you Chibits that do defend her and say, yeah, she's been through all that hell in school with Makishima Shogo and all that, what happened to her, and that's why she became an inspector and all so forth and so on. Personally, no. I just, overall, the way she acts, and the way she's trying to, like, get her boss, for instance, Akane, like, removed, it agitates me. Like, the entire events of last week's episode was because of her. Honestly, the entire downfall, why certain people died, like Oyanagi, last week, was because of her. She stopped the hologram search and all sorts of different stuff like that with the Division 3, and which in turn led it to where Oyanagi died last week. So Mika, honestly, she is becoming a very unlikable character by the episode because she is causing problems. She got characters killed last week. She also is trying to remove Akane from the actual force, because she doesn't believe that her motives are right. For instance, trusting enforcers, going against regular regulations of, what they have to do when they're doing their job, stuff like that. And it agitates me to no end when I see the way her character acts in the series. Like, the way she goes up to Sibyl in this episode and starts talking to the chief, like, oh, you need to remove the boss and all that, and pretty much, I'm just worried, it's very stupid and stuff like that. Pretty much, yada yada yada, what, Mika was saying. And you have to enjoy the entire attitude of Sibyl in this episode, where Sibyl's like, oh, is that it? I don't care. Just, Sibyl pretty much stated to Mika in this episode, like, I don't give a shit what you're talking about. That's exactly what Sibyl said to Mika. Yeah, I mean, that's just plain out blunt right there. That's exactly what Sibyl said to Mika. Mika didn't take it that way, of course, but that's what Sibyl probably meant to say. And the thing was, after, Mika left the room, I enjoyed that little piece of dialogue when you saw the Sibyl system say, like, oh, that it's gonna eat her alive. Like, she's gonna get eaten alive. And I'm like, oh my god, is that foreshadowing? Is that a death flag? Is that foreshadowing, or is that an opposite of a death flag? I hope not. Seriously. I'm just, no. Okay, so moving past that entire point with the overall progression with Mika in this episode, the interesting part about this episode is Togane. He is very interested in Akane's psychopaths. We see him point at Akane with a Dominator, and of course Sibyl knew this in this episode, but he points his Dominator at Akane to see exactly what her psychopath level is at, and it clearly states it's clear, and it's at 24. After all those events that Akane just saw, like all those people die in front of her, she had a clear head, her psychopath didn't raise at all, she was even amongst the corpses, the bloody corpses in front of her, and she was fine. So it clearly shows that there's something else going on here, because the writers, and the way it was wrote in this episode, they made us have a lot of focus on Akane's psychopaths. They made sure we would notice that in this episode. Now, I have a theory about Akane, and pretty much majority of everybody has probably theorized this once before, and it's definitely not original, because I've seen a bunch of people talk about it before, but it's starting to prove true the way the progression of this season of Psychopaths is. Akane has always been a little bit different when it comes to her, overall psychopath level. It's always been an average level, never been extreme, never been to the point to where it's just off the charts to where it's crazy. And it's always kind of been mentioned in the first season, and now it's being mentioned in the second season. It makes me believe that maybe Akane has a similar type of, condition like Makishima Shogo. How Makishima Shogo, how his psychopath level would stay down no matter what he did. I'm starting to feel like that's exactly what, Akane is going through. Maybe she is like that too. Because the way her psychopath level stays in a regular, normal area is kind of suspicious. It really is suspicious. And along with Makishima Shogo being introduced, or not introduced, but actually talked about for the first time in Season 2 of Psychopaths by the Doctor, Saiga, I think that's his name, by the Doctor, and that is brought up in this episode along with the overall attention to Akane's psychopaths. It's very suspicious writing along with that, and it makes me think that there's going to be some form of connection here. Honestly, another thing that pops up too with this episode is how the people that are slowly lowering their psychopath levels, how it keeps lowering down, we find out how they lower it. For instance, At the beginning of this episode, the inspector that was inducted had the eye removed by Kamui. Well, supposedly this girl has been taking a bunch of pills, like a prescribed dosage of pills that I'm guessing Kamui specifically made for her. He specifically said he made this dosage in medicine for her. It's specifically for her, and he said that he doesn't really approve of regular medicine that goes for everybody. That's pretty much what he tried to say in this episode, so it's very suspicious how he said this medicine was specifically for this person. And so I'm curious exactly what is in those pills, because we saw a bunch of pills she was taking. What were they? I mean, most likely it's that, I think it's Eustace thing. I forget the full name. It was introduced last week. I forget the name. Most likely I'm saying it wrong. But it was talked about last week about the overall fury that can lower your psychopath level. Well, pretty much, I'm willing to bet that's probably what's inside of those pills. It possibly could have some form of drug like that. And it would be very interesting it does turn out to be like that, because, Sybial System tried to deny it in last week's episode, so we'll have to see where it goes with that overall, progression in that plot point. But there's one other major thing I do want to talk about when it comes to this episode. It is the mask, or the face, that was shown in this episode. Like, Togane, for some reason, he knew where a hologram was. I mean, he was an inspector, of course, he was inspecting properly, but he knew where a hologram was, and he walked through this stone wall with Akane. The strange thing is, they pull out one of these, drawers in this room, this hologram room, and it has a face. An actual, human skin-looking face. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? And after thinking about it, after what, Saiga, the doctor, said in this episode, you used to do speeches. You used to have great speeches, you were a politician, you knew how to drag people in with your voice, you knew how to lower your voice at certain points, and drag them in with a deep voice. That's pretty much what, Saiga was saying to the politician dude. And the strange thing was, he said, now you're different. You don't have that same tone in your latest speeches. Who are you? And the strange thing is that he says this after the mask is revealed. So, clearly, there is a link between this mask and this dude. And from his very creepy-ass smile, I'm going to take a quick guess and theorize, okay? This is just me theorizing. I could be fucking wrong. I could be absolutely wrong. It has already been hinted at from this season that holograms can technically hide you from the Sybial System, and you won't be detected. It's already been proven since, the first episode. The thing is that, what if the mask that we saw can be put on random people, and if you make it like a custom-made face that doesn't have any human look-alike, you could be invisible to the Sybial System. They clearly said, human transplanted, face mask or whatever. That's what I think Akane said. I don't know if that's the exact dialogue, but she said that, and it makes me believe that the dude that's currently the politician had this face transplanted on him, and he doesn't really look like that. He has, a new face, and that could explain partially why his psychopath level can go down. It might explain some part of it. Not completely, because the pills are definitely connected, but it can explain some parts of it. Or how certain people could probably get away. They could change their face or whatever. I don't know. But that's just me theory crafting. I could be wrong. Overall, though, a very solid episode of Psycho-Pass. Brutal once again. A lot of violence and gore. Oh my god, the violence. So I can't wait for next week's episode of Psycho-Pass. I'm really looking forward to Psycho-Pass more and more by the week. And it's actually getting a lot better. We'll have to see where it goes. Where this overall game introduction away. Kirito Kamui said, game stato. Anyways, you all have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.